Welcome to the Morning English Podcast. Listen, learn, and speak English daily.
Imagine standing in front of a heavy glass office door. You're holding a lukewarm coffee, your badge is clipped to your lanyard, and you're just about to pull the handle.
Right, the classic terrifying first day.
Exactly. And the thing is, you know exactly how to do your job. I mean, you have a master's degree, you've been a financial analyst or, a software engineer for a decade.
You're completely competent.
Completely. But the moment your hand touches that cold metal handle, this terrifying realization just washes over you. You have absolutely no idea how to say hello to the person sitting at the reception desk on the other side.
Yeah, it's a very localized, highly specific form of paralysis.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, because your professional competency is entirely intact, right? Mm-hmm. But the communicative vehicle to actually express it simply isn't there yet.
And that is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today's mission is to unpack this fascinating instructional guide.
It really is a goldmine.
It is. It's a lesson plan specifically designed for English learners who are navigating one of the most stressful professional experiences imaginable, which is stepping into a new English-speaking workplace for the very first time.
And, what we have here isn't just a basic list of vocabulary words.
No, not at all.
It's essentially a behavioral and linguistic autopsy of corporate culture. It's a comprehensive breakdown of workplace integration.
Yeah, it isolates the essential terminology, the mandatory conversational scripts, the actual physical mechanics of pronunciation, and those invisible cultural tripwires that govern these spaces.
Which are everywhere, by the way.
Oh, absolutely everywhere. And I want to say right up front to you listening at home, even if you are a native English speaker, even if you've worked in corporate America or London or Sydney your entire life, looking at this guide is like viewing your daily work life through an X-ray machine.
It really strips it down to the studs.
It does. It exposes the hidden social mechanics, the required politeness, and the massive psychological hurdles of stepping into a new environment.
Right, because we take all of that for granted.
Exactly. We're going to decode exactly how professional relationships are built, literally from minute one. So let's just get right into the psychological landscape of day one.
Let's do it.
So the source material kicks off by addressing the user directly. And it acknowledges that starting a new job is, quote, exciting and a little nervous at the same time.
Which I gotta say, from a cognitive psychology standpoint, is a profound understatement.
Just a bit of an understatement, yeah.
Right, because we are talking about a massive concurrent cognitive overload.
Because you have a dual burden here. First, you have the standard baseline anxiety of just learning a new job.
Where is the printer?
Right. Where's the printer? How does the expense reporting software work? What are the unwritten rules about using the microwave in the break room?
The really important stuff.
Yeah. But layered on top of all of that, you are carrying the immense cognitive load of processing a completely new language environment.
If we look at this through the lens of cognitive bandwidth, the human brain has a finite amount of working memory.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, when you're a native speaker starting a new job, your language processing is fully automated. It just happens in the background.
You don't even think about it.
Exactly. Leaving all of your active cognitive resources completely free to focus on learning the new job duties. In psychology, we call that the extraneous load.
Okay, I follow.
But for an English learner, the language itself demands active, conscious processing.
It's front and center.
Right. Every single interaction requires them to mentally translate the input, formulate a response, check the grammar in their head, translate it back to English, and then articulate it.
Man, it's like trying to run a high-end video game on a computer that's simultaneously downloading a massive operating system update.
That is a perfect analogy. Everything lags.
Everything lags. And the source material seems to intuitively understand this lag because it immediately equips the learner with very basic, highly repetitive phrases.
Things like, hello, nice to meet you.
Or, today is my first day here. Or simply, my name is Alex.
Right. They are providing cognitive offloading tools.
And when I first read that section, I honestly thought, well, obviously, that's just basic English 101. Why are we dedicating precious page space to, hello, my name is?
It feels a bit elementary at first glance.
It does. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized these aren't just language tools. They are psychological anchors.
How do you mean?
Well, when I was younger, I used to play in local chess tournaments.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, just for fun. But when you first start learning chess, the sheer number of possible opening moves on the board is paralyzing.
I can imagine.
You look at the 64 squares and your brain just freezes.
Yeah,
So what do? You memorize the opening sequence.
better learn the patterns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You learn the Queen's Gambit or the Roy Lopez. You don't even have to think about the first 5 or 6 moves. You just execute them blindly.
And that takes the pressure off.
Right. Because you have that pre-rehearsed script, the panic of the ticking clock just fades. You buy yourself time to settle into the reality of the board.
That is a brilliant framework for this. But actually, let's push that chess analogy even further.
Yeah, let's do it.
What happens in a chess game if you don't know the opening moves?
You spend 10 minutes agonizing over the first pawn push.
Right. The clock runs down, you start sweating, your opponent senses your lack of preparation.
Oh yeah, they smell blood in the water.
Exactly. And the same applies to social interaction, especially in a corporate environment. The culture demands a highly specific rhythm.
A rhythm, I like that.
When you walk up to a new colleague, there is a fraction of a second, a literal beat, where a greeting is culturally expected.
And if you miss that beat, the awkwardness is just physically painful.
It really is. If you have to formulate that greeting from scratch, searching your mental dictionary for the culturally appropriate level of formality, conjugating the verb.
Checking the pronunciation of a word like colleague in your head.
Yes, you miss the beat. The interaction derails before it even begins.
So having it automated is survival.
Completely. If you have, hello, nice to meet you. Today's my first day here. Fully automated, stored in your procedural memory rather than your declarative memory, you master that rhythm.
You hit the beat perfectly.
You do. It signals competence. It shows you understand the social contract, even if your functional vocabulary beyond that point is entirely elementary.
But let me push back on that just a little bit. Is it really just about buying time and settling your own nerves?
What else do you think it is?
Because when I think about corporate introductions, there is a real power dynamic at play. When you flawlessly execute those opening moves, aren't you also implicitly proving that you belong there?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like saying, hey, I know the secret handshake. It lowers the stakes of the interaction right off the bat because the other person instantly relaxes and categorizes you as safe and professional.
It establishes a baseline of professional legitimacy. It lowers the internal cortisol spike for the speaker, sure, but it also manages the expectations of the listener.
Right, it's a two-way street.
You are signaling cooperative intent. You are showing that you are willing to play the game by the established rules.
Okay, so you execute the opening moves.
Yeah.
You've introduced yourself. The cortisol is dropping.
You've survived minute 1.
Barely. But to survive the rest of the day, you really need to understand the pieces on the board. And that brings us to the foundational vocabulary.
The structural nodes of the workplace.
Right. The source text outlines exactly 8 critical workplace terms that a beginner needs to know.
8 words to map the entire corporate ecosystem. It's quite a bold distillation of a very complex environment.
It is, and I want to list them because I actually have a bone to pick with this text.
Okay, let's hear them.
The words are manager, team, office, colleague, orientation, responsibilities, schedule, and department.
Okay.
Now, when I first read that list, I immediately thought, wait, just 8 words. I don't buy that for a second.
Why not?
Because if I am dropped into a new job, I need to know where the bathroom is. I need the word for payroll so I can, actually get paid.
Fair points.
I need the word for IT because my laptop is locked out. If I can't figure out those operational things, I am not surviving the week, let alone the month. How can this text claim these 8 words are enough?
Your reaction is completely logical, but it confuses operational vocabulary with structural vocabulary.
Okay, what's the difference?
What this text is doing is providing the foundational scaffolding. Think of it this way. Payroll and IT and bathroom, those are the furniture inside the house.
Right, you need them to be comfortable.
You definitely need them to live there. But these 8 words, manager, team, department, schedule, these are the load-bearing walls.
I see.
They answer the 3 most essential existential questions for any newcomer in any social hierarchy. Who am I dealing with? Where am I located in the system? And what am I supposed to be doing?
Okay, the load-bearing walls. I like that distinction. So walk me through the who portion of that scaffolding.
Look at how the text defines the who. We have manager, team, and colleague. That is your immediate vertical and horizontal social hierarchy.
The people above you and beside you.
Exactly. A manager, according to the text's very specific definition, is the person who supervises employees and makes important decisions.
Notice the precision there. It doesn't just say the boss.
No, it specifically highlights decision-making authority. Then you have the team, defined as a group of people working together, and the colleague, simply a person you work with.
It sets up really clear boundaries.
It does. You know who evaluates you, who you are required to collaborate with to achieve a goal, and who's simply sharing the physical or virtual space with you.
Right, the person you just nod at in the hallway versus the person whose code you actually have to review.
Exactly.
And then the where is covered by office and department. The office is the physical geography, but the department is the functional geography.
Yes, the text defines department as a section of a company that focuses on specific work.
So you are locating yourself in physical space and in purpose.
Precisely.
Huh.
And finally, you have the what? Orientation, responsibilities, and schedule.
Orientation being the initiation process.
Right. Responsibilities are the tasks or duties you must do, and the schedule is the plan for the day or week.
I want to pause on schedule for a second here.
Okay, sure.
Because earlier we talked about the audience for this guide. These learners are coming from all over the world.
Right.
When the text simply defines schedule as a plan for the day or week, it feels like it's totally glossing over a massive cultural concept.
It really is.
I was reading a piece of sociological research a while back about monochronic versus polychronic time. Have you come across that?
Yes, Edward T. Hall's work on cultural time orientations. This is a critical point to bring up.
Right. So in Western English-speaking corporate cultures, the US, the UK, Canada, we operate on monochronic time.
Time is linear.
Yes, time is a tangible commodity. It can be spent, saved, wasted, or invested. A schedule is a rigid, almost sacred grid.
It dictates everything.
But many learners coming from Latin America or parts of the Middle East and Africa, they come from polychronic cultures where time is fluid.
It's much more contextual.
Exactly. Relationships and conversations take precedence over arbitrary deadlines. If a meeting is scheduled for 10:00 a.m. in a polychronic culture, 10:30 is perfectly acceptable if you were, say, finishing a really valuable conversation with a colleague in the hallway.
The cognitive dissonance for a learner transitioning between those systems is staggering.
It has to be.
For a polychronic learner, the word schedule translated directly into their native language, it might just mean a rough guideline of intentions.
A suggestion.
Right. But in the English-speaking workplace, schedule means a rigid commodification of your existence.
Wow.
If you are 5 minutes late, you are perceived as disrespectful or disorganized. By isolating schedule as one of the 8 foundational pillars, the instructional guide is implicitly teaching Western corporate temporal values.
It's saying, in this culture, time rules everything.
Exactly. It's not just a vocabulary word, it's a behavioral expectation.
That is fascinating.
That
The
is-
word isn't just a noun, it's a cultural mandate. And I guess the same goes for responsibilities.
That's
Well, the text defines it as the tasks or duties you must do at work. And gives the example. My responsibilities include answering emails.
right.
It completely demystifies the corporate speak, but it also locks you into a specific contractual mindset. You are defined by your output.
Precisely. So, to answer your earlier pushback about why only 8 words,
My furniture analogy.
right. If you have these structural nodes, if you know who judges your output, which is the manager, what your output is supposed to be, the responsibilities, and the rigid time frame in which it must be delivered, the schedule.
You have the survival matrix.
You do. You can use that matrix to figure out where IT is or how to set up payroll. The structure allows you to acquire the operational details safely.
Okay, you can see the point. You win. The 8 words are the skeleton.
Thank you.
But, a skeleton doesn't do much until you put muscle on it and make it actually move. Which brings us to the case study in the text. The guide provides a highly structured 3-part scenario featuring a new employee named Alex, an HR representative named Emma, and a team manager named Mark.
It is an absolute masterclass in simulating the ideal, frictionless onboarding experience.
It really is. Let's break down the dialogue because the text pulls out very specific grammatical structures for the learner to memorize.
Yes, it highlights key phrases.
It kicks off with interaction 1, the reception. Alex walks into the building, approaches Emma, and before he can even stumble through his memorized introduction, Emma says, "Good morning, you must be the new employee."
Right.
Now, the guide explicitly highlights this phrase. It says, "you must be," is often used when someone expects to meet a new person.
This is a brilliant inclusion because it dives right into the pragmatics of epistemic modality.
Okay, stop right there. Time out. What on earth is epistemic modality? You can't just drop a term like that without breaking it down for me.
Fair enough, fair enough. Let's break it down. In linguistics, modal verbs, words like can, could, should, must, they express necessity or possibility.
Okay.
Now, deontic modality is about obligation. For example, you must wear a tie to work. That's a rule.
Got it. You must do this.
Right. But epistemic modality is about deduction and probability based on evidence.
Oh, interesting.
When Emma says, you must be the new employee, she isn't commanding him to be the employee. She is looking at the evidence.
A new face, looking slightly lost, arriving at 9 a.m. on a Monday.
Exactly. And she is deducing with near certainty his identity.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. So why is it so crucial to teach a beginner that specific deductive phrase? Why not just teach them the simpler question like, are you the new employee?
Because are you is a pure question that requires the learner to actively supply information to justify their presence.
It puts them on the spot.
It puts the burden of proof entirely on the newcomer. But you must be is a rhetorical embrace. It signals anticipation, preparation, and expectation.
Yes. It creates an immediate psychological safe harbor.
Exactly.
Imagine walking into a massive glass building, your heart is pounding, and having to justify your existence. Hi, I'm Alex. I was hired last week by a guy named Steve. Do you know who I am?
It's terrifying.
It is. But when Emma says, you must be the new employee, she's effectively saying, we know you're coming. We are prepared for you. You belong in this space.
It instantly removes the defensive posture.
And knowing that phrase passively means the learner knows they're welcome even before they speak a single word.
And then we move to what happens right after the introduction. Emma asks, how are you feeling on your first day?
I call this interaction 2, the vulnerability check. And this part actually blew my mind a little bit.
Why is that?
Well, Alex replies, a little nervous, but very excited. And Emma responds, that's completely normal. Starting a new job is always exciting.
It's a very revealing piece of dialogue regarding contemporary corporate culture.
Extremely revealing. Because think about old school, traditional corporate environments, say Wall Street in the 1980s, or a highly rigid old money law firm.
Right.
In those environments, admitting nervousness was an absolute liability. It was seen as weakness.
You never show fear.
Exactly. The expectation was that you walked in, shook hands firmly, and projected unwavering, bulletproof confidence, even if you were completely terrified inside. But this modern ESL text intentionally scripts an admission of vulnerability.
It reflects a massive shift in modern HR practices towards emotional intelligence and psychological safety.
It's so different now.
Validating employee feelings, acknowledging the innate stress of transitions, and normalizing anxiety are now considered absolute best practices for onboarding.
Which is great.
By explicitly teaching the learner how to express this complex, dual emotion, nervous but excited, the curriculum is giving them linguistic permission to just be human.
It's teaching emotional intelligence as vocabulary.
It really is.
And nervous but excited is such a highly strategic diplomatic phrase. It's honest about the anxiety, which builds trust through vulnerability, but it pivots immediately to enthusiasm.
Which reassures the employer that you are motivated.
Right. It's the perfect corporate answer. And from there, Emma hands Alex off to Mark, the manager, for Interaction 3, the guided tour.
The physical orientation?
Right. Mark introduces himself and says, let me show you around the office.
The guide specifically highlights show you around for comprehension, defining it as someone will guide you through a place.
I love this phrase, but I want to look at it as a metaphor.
Okay, let's explore that.
On a literal level, yes,
Yeah.
Mark is going to point out the break room, show Alex where the copy paper is kept, and point out the restrooms.
Basic.
But on a deeper sociological level, a manager saying, let me show you around, is an initiation rite. It's the ultimate gesture of leadership, taking a newcomer under their wing. The manager is actively, physically taking responsibility for integrating the new hire into the social hierarchy of the space.
They are conferring status on the newcomer just by walking next to them.
Exactly.
If we connect this back to the structural scaffolding we discussed earlier, the manager is acting as the bridge between the unknown and the known.
That's a great way to put it.
And by practicing this specific interaction, the learner knows exactly what script to expect. They won't be caught off guard when someone offers to walk them around. They know the culturally appropriate response is, as Alex says in the text, that would be great.
I see the immense value in that, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Got it.
Look at this entire interaction. Emma magically knows exactly who Alex is the second he walks in.
True.
Alex admits nerves, and Emma warmly validates him. Mark, the manager, is perfectly on time, warmly greets him, and personally offers a tour.
It is incredibly sanitized.
It's the absolute flawless, ideal path. Real life is almost never this clean.
It's usually quite chaotic.
Exactly. What happens when the receptionist is on a stressful phone call and just points to a chair? What happens when the manager is running 20 minutes late and nobody knows where Alex is supposed to sit?
Those are very real scenarios.
How does practicing this perfectly clean, utopian scenario help a learner when the reality of day one is usually messy and awkward?
That is a very valid critique of instructional design. However, from a pedagogical standpoint, providing the ideal path is absolutely necessary to establish a baseline of expectations.
A baseline.
You cannot navigate a deviation if you don't know what the standard operating procedure is actually supposed to look like.
So you have to know the rules before you can survive them breaking around you.
Precisely. If you know that the ideal socially expected script involves a greeting, an introduction, and a tour, you are much better equipped to prompt those actions if they don't happen naturally.
Ah, I see.
For instance, if the manager finally shows up late and stressed and completely forgets to offer a tour, the learner, knowing the ideal script, might confidently ask, "Could someone show me around the office later?"
That makes total sense.
The idealized script provides the blueprint for self-advocacy. If they didn't know a tour was standard practice, they might just sit at an empty desk all day, completely paralyzed by the ambiguity.
Okay, you've convinced me again. The script gives them the agency to ask for what they need.
It empowers them.
So having the perfect script in your head is only half the battle. The other half, and arguably the much harder half, is the actual physical mechanics of delivering those words out loud without stumbling.
The execution phase.
Right. And the source material dives deep into what I want to call the physics of fluency.
This is where we move from the cognitive and pragmatic realms into the purely physiological realm.
It addresses specific pronunciation tips and common beginner mistakes. And it starts by dismantling a massive misconception: speed.
Ah, yes.
The speed fallacy. The speed fallacy. The text explicitly warns, quote, "Don't worry about speaking fast. Clear speech is more important than speed."
It's a crucial warning.
Now, I feel like this is a universal truth of learning almost any new skill. You know, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Exactly.
But why is it that language learners universally equate rapid machine gun speech with fluency?
Because of the acoustic illusion created by native speakers.
An acoustic illusion.
Yes. When a learner listens to a native speaker, the speech sounds incredibly rapid to their untrained ear. It flows in one continuous, unbroken stream.
Right. It just sounds like one giant word.
So the beginner assumes that to sound native, they must replicate that sheer velocity. But what they don't realize is that native speakers aren't actually just talking fast. They are utilizing highly complex phonetic systems that allow words to blend naturally.
You mentioned some terms earlier when we were prepping for this. Assimilation, elision, connected speech.
Right.
Tried to wrap my head around them. Is assimilation like when Americans say wanna instead of want to?
That is a perfect example. Assimilation is when a sound changes to become more like a neighboring sound, simply making it physically easier to say quickly. Want to becomes wanna.
It's just laziness, basically.
Well, efficiency. Or think about the word handbag. Native speakers rarely pronounce the hard D.
Wait, really? Handbag. Handbag. Oh, well, I do say handbag.
Exactly. It assimilates into an M sound because your lips are naturally preparing for the B in bag. It sounds like handbag.
That's wild.
And then elision is the complete dropping of a sound, like saying camera instead of camera. These phonetic shortcuts are what create that smooth, rapid flow.
So when a beginner tries to just talk fast without understanding those underlying physical shortcuts, all that elision and assimilation, what actually happens?
They end up trying to articulate every single consonant and vowel perfectly, but at double speed.
Oh, man.
It requires immense muscular effort in the jaw and tongue. The result is a rushed, garbled, chaotic output that is entirely incomprehensible to the native listener.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
They are breaking the phonotactic rules of the language by brute force.
It's like trying to play a Jimi Hendrix guitar solo at double speed before you've even learned how to hold the pick. You're just frantically mashing the strings and creating noise.
That's exactly what it is.
And ironically, trying to speak quickly actually projects the exact opposite of confidence, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It projects panic. It signals to the listener that you are incredibly uncomfortable taking up space in the conversation, and you are rushing to get your turn over with as quickly as humanly possible.
Whereas deliberate, measured speech, even if it's quite slow, it projects authority.
It shows you are in control.
It tells the listener, I am taking the time to articulate my thoughts clearly, and I expect you to afford me the time to do so. The source text is literally trying to give the learner permission to claim their time and space in the room.
Which is a powerful, powerful psychological shift.
Speaking of things that trip beginners up, the text moves right into the translation trap.
Oh, this is a big one.
It points out the danger of translating directly from a native language, noting that this creates unnatural English.
This is arguably one of the hardest cognitive habits to break.
Why is it so hard?
When we learn a language as adults, our brain's default setting is to act as a one-to-one dictionary.
Right.
We conceptualize a thought in our native language, we mentally translate the individual words into English, and then we string them together using the grammatical syntax of our mother tongue.
Right. And I was thinking about how to visualize this, and it reminds me of trying to use the wrong currency in a vending machine.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Let's say you're visiting London and you're thirsty. So you go to a vending machine. You reach into your pocket and you pull out a perfectly good, shiny American quarter. And you try to put it in the slot.
It won't work.
Right. Now, the quarter has inherent value. It's real money. The machine is fully functional. But the machine is calibrated for a completely different shape, a different weight, a different mechanical system entirely.
It's expecting a pound coin.
Exactly. It's just going to spit the quarter right back out at you. Direct translation feels like that. The individual English words might be technically correct, but if you assemble them using the currency of your native language's grammar and idioms, the English-speaking listener, the vending machine, won't be able to process the meaning.
It just bounces off.
It does.
That is an excellent analogy, but let's actually take it a step further. What happens if you get frustrated and keep trying to forcefully jam that American quarter into the British machine?
You break the slot.
Exactly. You don't just lose your money, you break the mechanism.
Oh, I see.
In a corporate setting, if you continually use direct translations that sound unnatural or inadvertently rude because the syntax is completely wrong, you aren't just failing to communicate a single idea.
You're damaging the relationship.
You are slowly breaking the social relationship. The listener becomes fatigued trying to decode your meaning every single time you speak.
So to avoid breaking the machine, you have to use the local currency.
Yes. You have to adopt what the text calls common English phrases as complete, indivisible units of meaning, rather than assembling them from scratch like Lego bricks every single time.
Use the phrases as complete units. I love that. And that ties perfectly into the next concept the text explores, which is sentence rhythm.
Ah, the prosody.
The guide advises learners to listen to natural conversations to catch this rhythm. Now, when I read sentence rhythm, I initially assumed it meant speaking like a metronome, keeping a perfectly steady beat. But is it actually more about which words we choose to emphasize to show intent?
It's really a combination of both, actually. Every language has its own unique prosody, its own music and timing.
Okay.
Languages are generally divided into two categories: syllable-timed and stress-timed.
What's the difference?
Spanish or French, for example, are syllable-timed. Each syllable takes up roughly the exact same amount of time, giving it a very steady, machine gun-like rhythm. Da-da-da-da-da.
Yes, sir. Very even.
English, however, is a stress-timed language. The rhythm is determined by the stressed syllables occurring at roughly equal intervals, while the unstressed syllables in between them get compressed, rushed, or reduced to a very short sound.
Okay, give me an example of that in action so I can hear it.
Think of the phrase, "I'm looking forward to learning from everyone."
Okay.
The beat, the stress, lands on the key content words: looking, forward, learning, EV, everyone. Tap, 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 tap.
Right, I hear that.
The words I'm, to, and from are just grammatical glue. They get compressed.
Kept learning from everyone.
Exactly. If a learner from a syllable-timed language tries to speak English, they will naturally stress every word equally. I am looking forward to learning.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it sounds completely different.
It sounds robotic, exhausting, and completely unnatural, even if the pronunciation of every single vowel and consonant is utterly flawless.
So it's not just about hitting the right notes. It's about hitting them on the right beat and compressing the notes that don't matter as much.
Exactly. And the text rightly notes that passive listening, like listening to podcasts or watching movies, tunes the brain to this specific musicality.
It's learning by osmosis.
By constantly bathing in natural speech, the brain absorbs that rhythmic pattern subconsciously. It improves comprehension because you start to naturally anticipate exactly where the stress patterns will land. And it improves speaking because your brain inherently wants to mimic that music when you produce the language.
You just soak in the beat until it feels natural.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the trickiest part of this whole deep dive, I think. Communication, as we all know from painful personal experience, isn't just about the words you say.
Unfortunately not.
It's not just about how fast you say them or even the beautiful prosodic rhythm you use. It is heavily, heavily reliant on the unspoken physical cues that accompany those words.
Body language.
And this instructional text does not shy away from that reality. It dives right into the unspoken language of cultural expectations.
This section on cultural tips for the workplace is, from an anthropological perspective, perhaps the most critical part of the entire guide.
Really, the most critical.
I believe so. It moves completely beyond linguistics and into sociology. It highlights 3 specific behavioral mandates for the learner. Be polite, make eye contact, and be friendly.
Let's start with make eye contact, because this one feels like a complete cultural minefield.
Oh, it absolutely is.
The source explicitly states, in many cultures, eye contact shows confidence and respect. When I read that, I immediately thought, wow, that is highly, highly localized.
It is entirely localized to Western and particularly Anglo-American corporate culture. The fact that the guide needs to state this so explicitly highlights a massive global divergence in nonverbal communication.
Let's talk about that divergence, because for a massive portion of the global population, maintaining direct, sustained eye contact with a manager or a superior is not a sign of respect at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite.
If you look at Geert Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory, specifically the power distance index,
Okay, what is the power distance index?
it measures how a culture views hierarchy and authority. Cultures with high power distance, which includes many Asian, African, and Latin American cultures, value strict hierarchical boundaries.
Okay.
In those cultures, lowering your gaze when speaking to authority is a necessary demonstration of deference, humility, and respect.
You are honoring their status.
Exactly. Direct eye contact is interpreted as a challenge, an act of insubordination, or outright aggression.
So imagine this scenario. You have a brilliant new employee from a high power distance culture. They have memorized the English vocabulary perfectly.
You've got the rhythm down.
Right. They walk into the manager's office in Chicago or London. They want to show the utmost respect to their new boss, so they lower their eyes and look at the desk while delivering their flawless English introduction. They are completely misread.
It's a catastrophic cultural mismatch.
Catastrophic.
But the English-speaking manager, operating in a lower power distance culture where egalitarianism is simulated through eye contact, thinks, this person lacks confidence.
Or worse, this person is avoiding my gaze. They are hiding something. They are untrustworthy.
Exactly. The learner's attempt at profound respect is decoded as incompetence or deceit.
That is heartbreaking,
Yeah.
honestly. So by explicitly teaching eye contact as a required physical behavior, the guide is providing a crucial cultural translation, not just a linguistic one.
Yes.
It's explicitly telling the learner, I know what this means where you are from, but in this specific ecosystem, this physical action equals confidence. You have to perform it.
It forces us to ask a difficult question about the nature of language learning. How much of speaking English in a corporate setting is actually just performing these expected physical behaviors?
Think about it. If you memorize the script perfectly, hello, my name is Alex, today's my first day, and you get the rhythm and the pronunciation absolutely right, but you stare at the floor the entire time, have you successfully communicated?
Pragmatically speaking, you have not. Communication is the successful transfer of intent.
And your intent in land.
Right. Your intent was to say, I am a competent, respectful, new professional ready to join the team. The words carried that message, but your body language actively destroyed it before it reached the listener.
Wow.
In a high-context professional environment, the physical performance frequently outweighs the verbal content. The guide implicitly recognizes this reality by placing eye contact and smiling right alongside vocabulary lists and grammar rules.
It's linguistic theater. You have to hit your marks on stage, deliver your lines with the right rhythm, and make sure your facial expressions match the genre of the play.
That's a great way to think about it.
If you're acting in a comedy but crying, the audience is confused.
Yeah.
And part of that play, part of that performance involves what I'm calling the Trinity of politeness.
Ah, yes.
The text highlights the use of please, thank you, and excuse me.
the essential social lubricants of the English language.
Right. And again, my initial reaction was, these are so basic. We teach these to 2-year-olds. What's the magic word, Timmy, please?
Right, it feels obvious.
Why dedicate valuable space to them in a corporate survival guide for highly educated adults?
Because we have to understand the sociolinguistic mechanics of what those words actually do in a high-stress environment.
Okay, explain the mechanics.
In pragmatics, there's a concept called politeness theory, developed by Brown and Levinson. It revolves around the idea of face.
Like saving face.
Similar, yes. Every person has a positive face, which is the desire to be liked and approved of, and a negative face, which is the desire for autonomy and freedom from imposition.
Okay, positive face is wanting to be liked. Negative face is wanting to be left alone. I'm following.
Exactly. So when you ask someone to do something in an office, you are committing a face-threatening act.
A face-threatening act. I love how dramatic linguistics can be.
It is dramatic. You are imposing on their negative face their autonomy. In a cross-cultural environment where language barriers exist, misunderstandings are mathematically guaranteed to happen.
It's inevitable.
A sentence from a learner might come out sounding incredibly demanding because they simply lack the nuanced, advanced vocabulary to soften it.
Right.
For example, instead of saying, "Would you mind possibly passing me that quarterly report when you have a second?" they might just say, "Give me the report."
Which, to a native speaker's ear, sounds incredibly aggressive and rude. It's a direct attack on their autonomy.
Exactly. It's a massive face-threatening act. But if that clunky, highly direct sentence is wrapped in the trinity of politeness, "Please give me the report, thank you," the friction is instantly mitigated.
It softens the blow.
Please and thank you act as linguistic tokens. They are mitigating devices that restore the listener's autonomy. The native speaker recognizes the effort at politeness, accepts the token, and forgives the grammatical bluntness.
A grammatical mistake, or an overly blunt syntax, is easily forgiven if it's sandwiched between a please and a thank you.
They do the heavy lifting.
Those words signal cooperative intent, which is ultimately the most important message in any team environment. They are the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free cards for language learners.
That is exactly their function. They absorb the shock of cultural and linguistic friction.
Okay, so let's take stock here. We've covered the structural vocabulary, the required scripts, the physical physics of pronunciation, the rhythmic music of the language, the culturally loaded eye contact, and the sociolinguistic mechanics of politeness.
It's a lot.
Mastering all of this simultaneously while trying to figure out how to actually do a new job is frankly overwhelming. It's a monumental cognitive task.
It requires immense resilience.
Which is why the final major section of the source material completely shifts gears. It moves away from what to learn and focuses entirely on the psychological mindset required for the journey.
Yes.
It's about overcoming fear and establishing a daily practice regimen.
This section addresses what is arguably the single most significant barrier to adult language acquisition, the paralyzing psychological fear of making mistakes. The text states very simply, mistakes are part of learning.
It's such a simple cliché sentence, but in this context, it carries immense weight.
It really does.
The fear of making a mistake, the fear of looking foolish in front of new colleagues, it completely halts the learning process. If you are terrified of mispronouncing a word or using the wrong tense, you just won't speak.
You shut down.
You'll stay silent in meetings. And if you don't speak, you don't practice.
Right.
And if you don't practice, you never improve. It's a vicious, self-fulfilling cycle of silence.
To explain exactly why this happens, we have to look at Stephen Krashen's theory of the affective filter in second language acquisition.
The affective filter.
The affective filter is an invisible psychological barrier. When a learner is anxious, highly self-conscious, or afraid of ridicule, this filter goes up. And it doesn't just make them quiet, it literally blocks the brain from processing and acquiring new language input.
Wait, it physically blocks learning? How does that actually work?
It's rooted in neuroscience. When you are afraid of making a mistake, your amygdala triggers a stress response, releasing cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Right. High levels of cortisol actively inhibit the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain responsible for encoding new memories.
Oh, wow.
So a terrified learner might hear the English words, they might even understand them in the moment, but the brain is too busy managing the physiological anxiety to store that linguistic data in long-term memory.
The input bounces off the affective filter.
Yes. Lowering that filter by normalizing mistakes, by truly believing that mistakes are part of learning is scientifically necessary for memory encoding to occur.
So you have to fail to remember.
You have to be willing to sound foolish in the short term to allow your brain to build the fluency for the long term.
You have to embrace the messy middle. The anxiety literally deletes the vocabulary before it can be saved. That is wild to me.
It's a biological reality.
And to help lower that filter and build confidence, the guide prescribes a very specific 4-step daily practice tip. It says, listen to podcasts daily, repeat phrases aloud, practice with friends, and learn new vocabulary every day.
It's a beautifully comprehensive regimen. It covers passive input through podcasts, active physiological output by repeating aloud, social application with friends, and continuous cognitive expansion with new vocabulary.
It reminds me so much of training a muscle. I used to be really into weightlifting, and you learn very quickly that you don't get stronger by sitting on the couch and reading a book about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That would be nice, but no.
You can memorize all the anatomy, you can understand the physics of a bicep curl perfectly, but until you pick up the heavy iron and subject your muscle fibers to physical resistance, absolutely nothing changes.
That is a very biologically accurate analogy. Reading the grammar rules silently is the equivalent of reading the weightlifting book. It provides declarative knowledge, but no procedural skill.
Exactly. And repeating phrases aloud is the mental equivalent of lifting the weights. You have to physically train the muscles of your jaw, your lips, your tongue, and your vocal cords to produce these entirely new sounds.
It's a physical workout.
You're literally building neurological pathways, thickening the myelin sheaths around the neurons through sheer physical repetition. But I want to push back on one of their tips here. Practice with friends.
What's the issue with that?
Is that actually good advice? Because if my friends are also English learners, are we just going to reinforce each other's mistakes?
That is a very common concern, but it misses the primary function of practicing with friends.
Which is what?
The goal of practicing with peers isn't necessarily perfect grammatical correction. The goal is lowering the affective filter. A friend provides a low-stakes, safe environment to test your strength.
Oh.
It's like going to the gym with a spotter. You are much more willing to attempt a heavier weight or a more complex sentence structure if you know someone is there to catch the bar if you fail without jugging you.
And that makes total sense.
Once the confidence is built in that safe environment, the learner can carry that confidence into the high-stakes corporate arena.
Okay, I love that. The friend is the spotter. And the final tip, learning new vocabulary every day, is basically the concept of progressive overload. You just add a little more weight to the bar each time so the muscle keeps growing.
And if we connect this all to the bigger picture of adult learning, it underscores a fundamental truth. Language is not merely a body of knowledge to be passively acquired. It is a physical and social skill to be actively performed.
Like playing an instrument.
Exactly. And like any performance-based skill, consistency beats intensity every single time. Listening daily, even for just 10 minutes on a commute, keeps the brain tuned to the frequency of the language.
You know, this entire discussion actually makes me want to pause and ask you, the listener, to reflect on your own learning processes for a moment.
It's a good moment for that.
Whether you are currently trying to learn a new language for travel, or you're figuring out a complex new software program at work, or even just picking up a new hobby like painting or playing tennis, how often does the fear of looking like a beginner stop you dead in your tracks?
Probably more often than we'd like to admit.
Right. How often do you avoid the necessary, awkward, repetitive practice because you hate the feeling of not being instantly competent at something?
It's a very uncomfortable feeling.
This ESL guide, designed for people facing immense corporate pressure, is a stark reminder that the awkwardness isn't a sign of failure. It is the required entry fee for mastery. The cortisol spike, the fumbling for words, the missed beats, that is what the process of growth actually looks like.
It's an incredibly important reminder for all of us. The beginner's mindset requires a profound amount of humility, but it's the only direction that actually leads forward.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and pull all of this together. We've gone on quite a profound journey today, dissecting what initially looks like a very simple, rudimentary beginner's English guide.
It's been fascinating. We started by examining the immense psychological pressure and cognitive load of day one, and how basic introductory phrases serve as vital emotional anchors and survival mechanisms to manage the ticking clock of social interaction.
We mapped out the structural vocabulary of the office, those essential 8 load-bearing words that answer who, what, and where, and debated how concepts like schedule secretly encode Western monochronic time values.
We dissected the perfect, idealized HR greeting script and realized how phrases like "you must be" utilize epistemic modality to create immediate psychological safety.
We explored the physiological physics of fluency, debunking the speed fallacy, explaining the mechanics of assimilation and elision, recognizing the danger of the direct translation trap, and highlighting the critical importance of stress-time sentence rhythm.
And we dug deep into the unspoken, performative language of cultural expectations, why eye contact is culturally loaded and tied to power dynamics, and how the trinity of politeness acts as a crucial sociolinguistic shock absorber to protect negative face.
Finally, we tackle the neuroscience of fear, the affective filter, and the physical reality of building a language muscle through daily progressive practice.
It truly is a comprehensive roadmap for navigating not just a new lexicon, but an entirely new social and corporate ecosystem.
And that's what I want to leave our listeners with today. The principles we extracted from this guide, the necessity of clear communication over rapid-fire speed, the quiet strategic power of admitting vulnerability with a phrase like, "I'm nervous but excited," the importance of active listening to catch the rhythm of a room, and the acute awareness of our physical presence and eye contact, these are universally applicable.
They absolutely are.
Whether you are stepping into a foreign country, or you're a native English speaker stepping into a new corporate boardroom, or even just joining a new community organization in your hometown, the underlying mechanics of human connection remain exactly the same.
The foundational rules of establishing trust, mitigating friction, and demonstrating cooperative competence don't change, regardless of what your native tongue happens to be.
Exactly. Which leads me to a final thought experiment for everyone listening.
Oh, I like these.
At the very end of this source material, there's a final practice challenge. The guide asks these brave learners to practice introducing themselves aloud. It gives them a fill-in-the-blank script. "Hello, my name is blank. Today's my first day. I'm excited to join the team."
A very standard script.
Right. But I want you to think about the script you use in your own native language when you meet someone new. Maybe it's at a networking event, a conference, or a dinner party. Think about the exact sequence of words you use.
We all have one.
Is your introduction truly spontaneous? Or, over the years, have you unknowingly developed a highly refined, well-rehearsed set of opening moves?
That's a great question.
How much of our daily quote-unquote natural interaction is just a pre-written script we've memorized to manage our own social anxiety and lower our own affective filters?
Probably more than we think.
And how does analyzing a beginner's language guide expose the hidden automated mechanics of our everyday conversations? Keep that in mind the next time you extend your hand, make direct eye contact, and introduce yourself to a stranger. Are you speaking freely, or are you just playing the opening moves on the board? Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.